Dear sewing friends, today we are drafting and sewing a cardigan, the one that you see on me and the one that you see behind me right over here. It's the same cardigan, different types of fabrics. Of course, you will use whatever your heart desires, wherever your creativity takes you. If you have made any of the tops that we previously made on my channel, like the cami or maybe one of the princess sleeve tops or anything else, this cardigan would be a perfect addition, so that way you can always wear those tops in a colder month as well. Now this design is not too loose, not too tight. It's perfect for layering for any time of the year, any season really. So you can make it for spring, summer, fall, or winter. Now it features a little cuff over here, features a really nice body right over here, a little bit form-fitting around the waist, just a tiny bit, and of course that classic band that goes up front over here. So it looks like that. It's really easy to draft this. Maybe it will take you a couple of hours from drafting to sewing. And I managed to squeeze this one out of 1 yard of fabric. Of course, for you, it will depend on your size, on the width of your fabric, and what kind of cardigan you're making. Who knows, maybe you're going to make this knee length, so it's all up to you. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it. Now grab your pattern paper, your gift wrapping paper, your old newspapers, whatever you have available, and let's get started. Now you will need just a couple of measurements, very simple. First will be your nape to waist measurement measured on the back. And then you will need 3 circumferences, your bust, your waist, your hips, and we're going to be using 1/4 of each for our drafting. And you will also need your back shoulder width, also measured on the back, and we're going to be using half of that. If you've been with me for quite some time, then you already know how to take those measurements specifically for my videos. If you're not sure, the link for the video on how to take those measurements will be in the info box below, so go ahead and take a look. And we are moving forward with our drafting. So this is my pattern paper, and I'm going to try to fit the back pattern piece in here and the front pattern piece in here, so that way we minimize the use of paper. Now this line is nape to waist. So as always, we start our drafting from the back pattern piece, nape to waist. Then, as always, we're gonna go ahead and divide it in half, right? So mine is 16, divide in half, here's 8 inches and 8 inches. Now what we have is your waist, your bust, and your shoulders. On each one of these, let's go ahead and mark 1/4 circumferences first. So I'm marking here my 1/4 waist circumference. Here I will be marking my 1/4 bust circumference. And here I'm going to be marking my back shoulder width. Fantastic. Again, our waist, our bust, our shoulders. Now this is great, but it only goes from the nape all the way to waist. So we want our cardigan to be longer, at least I do. Therefore, I'm gonna go ahead and I will measure how much longer from the waist I want my cardigan to be. And that is the length that I'm going to mark right over here. So I want my cardigan to be about 6 inches longer from the waist down. So 6 inches right over here, that's for me. And then this is going to be your hip line, approximately your hip line. So go ahead and mark 1/4 of your hip circumference on it. There we go. Now we have our hips, our waist, our bust, and our shoulders. Now before we move forward, let's go ahead and take care of the side seam. Now here on the bottom of our garment, we marked 1/4 of our hip circumference. However, the bottom of my cardigan does not reach my hips. Therefore, I really don't need the full 1/4 circumference of my hips right over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minus 1/2 inch right over here. The 1/4 circumference of my hips is 9.5, so minus 1/2 inch, and I really don't want it to be super shaped. What I'm going to do in my case, I'm going to make the bottom of my garment, the hem, equal to the bust line as well. So here I'm going to extend my bust line to be equal to 9 inches. Then what we're going to do is we're going to connect the bust and the bottom of our garment with a straight line. And just to give it a tiny bit more shape, we can take about 1/2 inch over here at the waist, so that way it's not just a straight line, and we can very nicely go ahead and curve it in here at the waist. You only want to take in here a tiny bit. You don't want to make a line like this. This definitely is not going to work. So just a tiny bit, just to give it some shape here at the waist. So here what we're going to do is we're going to take 1/6 of your full neck circumference plus about 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch for ease, and we're going to place this measurement right over here. So for me that's about 2.5 inches, so right over here. And then we're going to take about 1/2 inch to 1 inch up. So let's do 1/2 inch for right now. 1/2 inch up right over here and 1/2 inch down right over here. Now we're going to connect these two. Oops. Now I want this cardigan to be with a drop shoulder, so I'm going to extend this line, let's say by about 2 inches. So I thought 1 inch will do at first, but then I decided to change my mind, so 2 inches. This is our original shoulder. This is plus 2 inches, so now this is a drop shoulder. So now we need to take care of the neckline and the armhole. For the armhole, real easy. Let's go ahead and drop a straight line from the edge of the shoulder all the way down. Divide it in half approximately. It doesn't have to be exact, about in half. Take about 1/4 of an inch towards the inside of your garment. Now here, a very interesting moment. Now we have 1/2 inch of ease in the bust in my case, because 1/4 circumference of my bust is 8.5, and then I extended it by 1/2 inch to match the bottom hem of my garment. So I will have 1/2 inch of ease on one side, on the other side, and 1/2 inch on the back and on the front. So altogether it's going to be 2 inches of ease in the whole garment. Now you can leave this line as is right over here, but it gives you just an approximate position of the depth of your armhole. Usually I like to raise it up a little bit. So in my case, let's go ahead and just raise it up by, I would say, 1/2 inch. And of course, if needed, we can always cut it away. There we go. So now I have to connect this point, and this point with a really nice curved line. So if you have a French curve, you can do that with a French curve. If not, you can just do it by hand. Usually these top 2 points I will connect with a straight line. And after that, we just draw a J, like so. You definitely want to make sure that this is really nice and neat. It doesn't go like this, because this would be too much. That doesn't dip down. So you definitely just want to make a really nice line, kind of like a letter J. For the neckline, usually what I would do is I would connect this point and this point with a curved line, and it's going to give us a back neckline. But I would like for it to be a little bit deeper. So let's go ahead and take 1/2 inch right over here. And here, this is too long of a shoulder and too narrow of a neckline for the cardigan style that we're going for. So what I want to do is, this whole shoulder seam is 5.5 inches. Let's make it 4.5 inches. So now we're going to connect this point and we're going to make a back neckline like that. So we're gonna draw a little box, like so. And now with a smooth curved line, we're going to make that into a back neckline. And if needed, I'll make it a little bit deeper after I do try it on. All right, let's go ahead and mark it. This is a back pattern piece. The direction of the stretch is going to go this way. And then of course, don't forget the placement of the fold. There we go. And now what we're going to do is we're going to fold it in half, like so, on the center back line right over here. And now I'm gonna go ahead and copy some of the main features from the back pattern piece onto this top layer, so that way we can build our front pattern piece. So actually I went ahead and copied everything so that way it would be easier for us to see where we will make the changes for the front pattern piece. So let's go ahead and open it up. There we go. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take care of the shoulder for the front pattern piece. We need to make it higher than what we have here on the back pattern piece. So I'm going to raise it by a little bit less than an inch. Let's say 5/8 of an inch, like so. Now we will need to draw a new shoulder seam. What we need to do is we need to connect this and this together. But what will end up happening is that your back shoulder seam, which was 4.5 inches, is now shorter than your front shoulder seam. So this one is 1/4 inch longer than your back shoulder seam. So now we have to shorten it by 1/4 inch right over here. Here's the mark where we took in the armhole by 1/4 inch for the back. Let's do exactly the same for the front. But this time we're going to take 1/2 inch. So now what we need to do is we need to connect this point, and this point and create a front armhole. So again, I'm going to connect these with a ruler first. And now from here, a really nice, smooth, curved line. There we go. And you see the difference between the back armhole and the front armhole, right? There we go. Let's go ahead and outline the new details in red so that we can see the difference. Now in my case, I'm going for an open front cardigan. In your case, you can make buttons, snaps, a zipper, whatever you would like. But in my case, as I mentioned, I'm going for an open front cardigan and I want about 2-inch wide band that will go all the way up around the neckline and down the other side. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to measure 2 inches right over here on this new bust line or on the old bust line, whichever way. So 2 inches here, 2 inches here, 2 inches on the bottom. And we're going to connect these points with a straight line here. There we go, so a straight line. We need to connect this with the edge of the neckline. So at first, if you'd like to, you can make a straight line just to give yourself a guideline. But of course, we can't leave it like this. So we need to round it up a little bit. There we go. Now we can go ahead and outline everything. So this is going to be the front. The direction of the stretch goes this way, and this is not going to be cut on folds, so you're going to cut 2 of these because this is going to be an open front. Now while we're at it, let's go ahead and measure the back armhole and the front armhole. Fantastic, we got our measurements and these are going to help us in building the sleeve. For the length of the sleeve, very easy. As always, we measure from the edge of the shoulder in a slightly bent position all the way to your wrist. However, here we have a drop shoulder. So what you're going to do is you still measure the length of the sleeve as you would for a fitted garment, and then you just minus by however you extended your shoulder in order to make it a drop shoulder. So let's say the usual length of the sleeve for you is 25 inches. We've extended our shoulder by 2 inches, so 25 minus 2 would be 23. So that is the easiest way how to go ahead and measure your sleeve. I'm gonna go ahead and draft 20 inches for the length of my sleeve. There we go. This is the length of my sleeve. If needed, I can always cut away and see if I want to add a cuff over here or something else. The length of the sleeve is determined. Let's go ahead and talk about the cap height. Now I have a full video that goes into details about the cap height and the shape of the sleeve and the relationship between the sleeve and the armhole and the mobility of the garment. So I'm not going to repeat all of that. If you're interested, the video is going to be in the info box below. I'm just going to say that a regular fitted quite high cap height would be about 5 to 6 inches, maybe a little bit more. So because this is a drop shoulder garment, let's go ahead and take half of that. So I'm gonna go and I'm just gonna eyeball. I'm going to take 3.5 inches right over here. That is going to be the cap height for my sleeve. This is going to be a super quick and easy method of drafting the sleeve, not by the book at all, but this works for garments like this. So let's go ahead and do that. Now for the width of the sleeve, usually for any fitted garment, in my case, I take your upper arm circumference plus 1 inch on each side for ease. Now in this case, because we are working with a drop shoulder and we are working with a garment that you're going to wear on top of other garments, because this is a cardigan, I'm going to take half an inch more. So usually it's 6 inches on this side, 6 inches on this side. I'm going to take half an inch more, so it's going to be 6.5 inches on each side, and that's going to be the width of my sleeve. What we're going to do now is we're going to build a triangle. So we're going to connect this end and this end. Then we're going to go ahead and divide it in half over here. And over here, and then we're going to divide these parts in half as well. Alright, so one side of the triangle, another side of the triangle, divide in half, and then divide in half again. Now what we're going to do is a savage move, but it works. Now we're going to take 1/4 inch down right over here, 1/4 inch up right over here, 1/4 inch up over here, and 1/4 inch down right over here. Now what we need to do is we need to connect all of these points with a really nice curved line. This point right over here and this point right over here in the middle of these two lines is going to stay the same. Alright, it's starting to take shape of the sleeve, which is really awesome. Now go ahead and take your measuring tape. Here's the measuring tape, and now you will need to remember, what did your front and your back armhole measure? So our sleeve needs to be no smaller than that measurement. It actually needs to be a tiny bit bigger than that, maybe half an inch, just a tiny bit for ease. So this measures 15 inches, which is in fact 7.5 here and 7.5 here. So this sleeve would actually fit perfectly into our armholes. However, I would like for it to be a tiny bit bigger than that, just a tiny bit. So what I'm going to do here is a savage move, and not to redraft everything that we've just created, I'm just going to add 1/4 inch over here and a 1/4 inch over here, and I'm just going to extend the sleeve right over here. Now we need to determine which one is going to be the front and which one is going to be the back. So let's say this is front and this is going to be the back. In majority of the cases, the back is fuller, so what we're going to do here is as you see, this is the point where we at first went through as is. However, here this time I did lift it up a little bit. There we go. So it's a little bit fuller, and the front is actually more curved. So here we're going to take in a little bit more. There we go. Now we need to take the measuring tape and measure it one more time just to make sure. Awesome, measures 15.5, which is half an inch larger than our armholes, which is absolutely great. Here on the bottom, we will need to determine our wrist circumference and add a little bit for the ease. So let's say 8. I think 8 will be a nice width of the sleeve. So 4 inches on each side. 4 inches here, 4 inches here. Now what we're going to do is, you can of course just connect this with this and that would be just fine. However, you can also do a little bit more shaping to your sleeve. What we're going to do is we're going to divide this in half approximately. So 16.5 inches, let's just round it up. Let's do 8.5 inches. Since this is not a super fitted garment, this will do. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw just a straight line. All right, so 4 inches is the width of one side of the sleeve for our wrist. Now here, obviously our elbow is thicker than our wrist, so let's go ahead and we'll take 5 inches for now. So we're gonna go ahead and we'll connect like that. And now we're going to connect this to the bottom. You can also take a measuring tape and measure if this is going to be a good amount for your elbow. You know, maybe I'll take 5.5. There we go. And now it pretty much made that really nice straight line. So I'll see which one I like better, but as always, I can always cut away, but I cannot add it back. And we're going to do exactly the same thing on the other side here as well. So I've shaped my sleeve on the other side exactly the same way because I will take a look as soon as I baste all the pieces together. I will take a look which one I like more, and if I want my sleeve to be more fitted in the elbow area, I'm just gonna go ahead and let out the basting and I'm going to cut away the excess right over here. Now this is the sleeve one more time. I just wanted to show you this in detail before we move forward. This is the back, this is the front. If I fold the sleeve along this straight line, which is also going to be your grain line, like so, you will see that the front is more curved than the back. So the back has more fabric, the front has less fabric. Now one of the last pieces that we need to draft is going to be the neckline band that is going to go all the way from the bottom hem right over here, up, and all the way to the back neckline and all the way down on the other side as well. So here, if you remember, we took 2 inches from the center front when we were drafting the front pattern piece. So those 2 inches we're going to add back as the neckline band right over here. So what you're going to do is you're going to draft a straight piece like that. For me, that is going to be 2 inches, so 2 inches. But you want to make sure that it's 2 inches on one side and 2 inches on the other side because we're going to be sewing it and attaching it together like so. So the seam is going to be right over here, and when you fold it over like so, it's going to create a really nice folded edge of our cardigan. Now, of course, you want to make sure that you add some seam allowances to it. As always, I draft without my seam allowances and I add them as I cut my fabric. Now, how to measure the actual length of this piece? What you want to do is you want to measure from the bottom hem all the way to the shoulder point right over here, and then you want to measure the back neckline right over here. And then you want to sum this length and hold this length, and that is going to be the total length of one piece. You will need to cut 2 of those pieces. Now here's another thing. You can also make this piece a little bit shorter, so that way you can stretch the neckline a little bit around the back neckline, so that way it would lay more flat. However, what I prefer to do is I prefer to take 1 inch in like so, and then we cut it away. And this is going to be at the center back right over here. So then when we have 2 pieces like so, we're going to place them right sides together, we're going to sew like this, and when we turn them, it's going to create a nicer and neater and flatter neckline that is going to be sewn right here at the center back. And I prefer this method a lot more than easing this whole piece into the back neckline. So you can do either way, whichever way you prefer, but I prefer this way. Sometimes I don't even do this, depending on how wide is the neckline right over here and what is the effect that I'm going for. But this time we're going to do that. So here's the piece that I have drafted. As you can see, it is a little bit wider then 4 inches because we need to account for seam allowances, all right? And I also need to perform this little piece right over here as well. As to which direction to cut, this way or this way, you know what? If your fabric stretches in both directions, a lot of times it doesn't necessarily matter which way you cut, as long as it's either horizontally or vertically. I've done both ways many times before, and I did not find much of a difference in how the garment is being worn. Now here I've used pretty much the entire yard of the fabric that I had, and I did cut my piece in the direction of the greatest stretch. So that way, if you do want to stretch your piece around the neckline, you will have that ability to do so because you did cut it in a direction of the greatest stretch. So this time I did cut it as I was cutting my back pattern piece and my front pattern piece. So the greatest direction of the stretch goes horizontally like so. Alright, so the pattern is ready. The next step is to cut our test garment. To assemble that, just basting stitches. We don't need to do much. We just need to double check the fit, and after that we can cut our actual fabric. Now, one of the reasons why I want to focus today a little bit more on cutting a test garment, and I will have a separate video about that, so I'm not going to go really in depth about this topic, but I really wanted to mention this because let's say you've been drafting patterns for quite some time and you know what you like, you know what goes where on your body for your specific figure, then absolutely go for it. But let's say this is your first or second time, you're just not sure about that shape of the sleeve, or you're just not sure if you like a cardigan of this style, or maybe you want to make a wider sleeve, maybe you want to make it more narrow or wider, maybe you're not sure about the length of the sleeve, whether it's going to complement you or not, or whether you're going to like it. Why wouldn't you cut a test garment? A lot of times in the comments I see people saying that, oh my god, I'm so scared to cut into my good fabric. What if I ruin it? What if it's not going to fit? My question is, why wouldn't you cut a test garment before you proceed with your good fabric? Why wouldn't you want to double check how it actually looks, whether the style is right, whether the fit is right, whether you like it or not? That will also give you the material to work with. You can then mark on the test garment itself, here I want higher shoulder, here I want more shoulder slope, here I want wider lapel, here I want wider sleeve or more narrow sleeve, and whatever else. Please do the test garment. If you're constantly feeling that anxiety, like, oh my god, what if? And instead of enjoying your hobby, you're just sitting there and staring at the fabric and you never even touch it because you're so afraid that something is going to go wrong, then why wouldn't you do a test garment? I beg you, please do a test garment. You will see that it will work the magic. It will release you from the stress, from the anxiety. It will give you the liberty, the creative liberty of pattern drafting and understanding what goes where to tuck it in, where to cut away, where to add, and things like that. Designers do test garments, pattern makers do test garments, pattern companies do test garments, and of course the same applies to us. It is a great method of how to learn about the fit, learn about your body, learn about your style. So I'm not gonna go any further into that, but if you're scared, if you're not sure, if this is your first, second time, or you just want to play around with the idea of drafting your own patterns, test garment is the answer. Now let's talk about the fabric. For the fabric, I would suggest for you to use knit, stable knit, or like double brush jersey knit, or something that has a really nice texture, really nice drape, and nice weight to it as well. So you don't want anything that's super flimsy because then your cardigan is going to look super flimsy. So you want something like this. So this is, I believe this was double brush jersey from Joann's. So you can still find it there. It was a recent purchase. So if you live in US, you can make your way there, and in the knit aisle you will see one of these. You can also use Liverpool knit or something with a really nice texture. You can use some of the more stable medium to heavy weight actual knits, and yeah, variety of different fabrics, so definitely play around with it. But I would use a knit fabric. One of the reasons for it is because the way we drafted the sleeve, if I would be doing woven garment, I would definitely pay more attention to that, and I wouldn't do such a savage move of drafting a sleeve for a fitted woven garment, for example. But since we're working with knits, we can afford ourselves a little bit of leeway here and there. So I would use something nice like this. As to how to assemble your garment, I'm going to give you a really quick rundown on the steps because on majority of the steps I have separate videos on how to go about it. Therefore, I'll guide you through what goes where, and after that, all of the links will be in the info box below for you to double check if you need to. As you can see, here's the seam allowance that I added as I was cutting the fabric, and also on the bottom right over here, I added 2 inches for the hem on the front pattern pieces and on the back pattern pieces as well. And you will see why in just a few minutes as I assemble this pattern. Now we're going to take our back pattern piece and our front pattern pieces and we're going to place them right sides together and we're going to sew the shoulder seams and the side seams. I am using a serger in my case, however you can use your regular sewing machine with a ballpoint needle or jersey needle or any other needle that is specific to your stretch fabric to avoid skipped stitches. Now I do have a video on how to sew knits on a sewing machine, so I will leave that for you in the info box below in case you want to take a look and double check how to go about it. Alright, so we sewed our neckband like so. Then we're going to go ahead and fold it in half. And I've already attached both sides with pin needles to the front of the cardigan. This is the back, and as you can see right over here, I made a little notch at the center back. So we're going to align this seam with the center back. So this is going to be at the back. The only thing that I'm going to do right now is this line is actually longer than the width of the actual neckband. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flatten this bit just a tiny bit, just a tiny bit, like so. So that way it's just a little bit smoother, like this. Then we're going to place this folded in half, right sides together with the center back, and we're going to pin it in place like so. And as I mentioned, I've pinned it in place all the way to the bottom and all the way to the bottom on the other side as well. Now what we're going to do is, before we can actually sew this all together, we need to finish the bottom of this neckband. So what we need to do right now is actually unpin a couple of pins right over here, and we need to take the neckband, we need to fold it right sides together like so, and we need to sew this little bit up, and I'll tell you why in just a few moments. And as you can see, the neckband over here is actually 2 inches shorter than the hem of our garment, and that's for a reason. These 2 inches I added to the bottom hem of the garment because we're going to fold it over, and I'll show you how to do that in a very nice and neat manner, so that way the bottom of your cardigan will look really nice. But as of this very moment, let's go ahead and sew this bit together. There we go. Now before we move forward, let's go ahead and tuck the serger end right in here, and I'm using a little tool like this. This was given to me by a really awesome sewing friend. You know who you are, and you are fantastic because this little tool is absolutely a lifesaver. Before that I was using a handmade one and it wasn't nearly as easy as with this one. Look at that. Bam, super easy. I absolutely love it. Again, thank you so much. I have the most amazing sewing friends. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to turn it right side out, like so. This is the bottom hem of the front of the cardigan. This is your neckband, like so. There we go. And as you can see right over here, I made a little mark. This is where 2 inches are from the bottom of the hem. Now what we're going to do is we're going to flip this bottom hem like so. There we go. So this is going to create a little sandwich. And we're going to pin together over here and all the way up. What this is going to do is, when we turn it out, it's going to give you a really nice, super nice finish right over here. and it is going to give you a really nice folded edge on the bottom, which after that you can finish on a cover stitch machine, you can finish with a blind hem by hand or on a sewing machine. You can even try to finish this with a flat block seam as well. So many different possibilities. Twin needle, you can finish this with a zigzag or 3-step zigzag. Alright, so I have already guided you through all of the options that you can use to hem your knit garments and cardigans like this one, and I will leave a full playlist that I've made particularly about the topic of sewing with knits at the end of this video and an info box below as well, so that way you will have all of the information and you will be able to choose what suits you the best for your particular garment and your particular cardigan. So I'm going to leave the hem for now, and the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to hem the sleeve. So here you can either hem it as is, you just fold it over and do one of the many options how you can hem your knit garment, or you can actually attach a cuff. So I think that's what I'm going to do. So here's the cuff. Here's one and here's the other. I did cut 2 of these. The direction of the greatest stretch needs to go horizontal like so. We're going to be folding this in half. So first you're going to sew the short ends or the long ends depending on the length of your cuff. So first you're going to sew these ends together. Then you're going to fold it in half like so, and we're going to attach it to our sleeve. So the cuff, the measurements for the cuff, I usually like them to be quite snug but still pretty comfortable depending on the amount of stretch of your knit. So definitely take a look. But I usually make them smaller than the actual width of the sleeve. So for example, here the bottom width of the sleeve was 8 inches, so I made my cuff to be 7 inches. So it's going to be a little bit smaller since the bottom of the sleeve here is already not too loose on my wrists. And that's it, your cardigan is ready. Thank you so much for watching. You rock if you watched all the way till this point, because I know this video is a little bit longer, but definitely check out the playlist that you see on your screen. Lots of useful information, and I will see you very soon in another video. In the meantime, happy sewing and happy test garment making.